Why don't we talk about oil and gas, the Straits of Hormuz, and all the? Are we taking any cruise ships through there anytime soon, or what? What's your outlook? And what should we
Yeah,
be doing with these oil and gas names that they have been doing so well?
yeah. So you said we know the scope and expansion of the war. I'm not sure that we do. I think we've opened a bit of can of worms here, and it's once you sort of hit the obvious targets, it's harder and harder to figure out where the little hidden targets are and where they're launching all these um, drone clusters from. And now you got the proxies getting involved, and it's sort of, I think, evolved to the stage where it's getting messy and it's hard to put down. In other words, it's just there is no surrender, and I don't think there's going to be any unconditional surrender as Trump had demanded earlier in this whole situation. And my fear is it just continues to drag on, and as it's done so, uh, Iran has become more and more vocal about attacking oil facilities or shutting the Strait of Hormuz and saying the other day, get ready for $200 oil. So they continue to dig in their heels here and fight back. And there's no surrender. And so that just, it makes me concerned that we've got a projected or protracted conflict here that's not going to provide any ease or relief for oil prices. Now, oil's off what, buck and a half, $2 this morning, still $94 a barrel, and that's all we're able to manage with a few things going on here. The U.S. issued a 30-day waiver on Russia exports of oil, so now for 30 days, Russia can sell their oil to whoever they want, and there's no sanctions. There's talk of releasing 400 million barrels of oil from our SPR, and so those two things maybe ease oil prices a little bit, but we're still subject to any news headlines or the next missile that may hit a tanker or other cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz. And for all practical purposes, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and I don't see any signs that this is all of a sudden Iran's going to shut down or there's going to be a ceasefire. Now there could be a ceasefire. On the other hand, as we talked about before, there could be on the part of Iran a scorched earth policy where they continue to attack oil facilities and maybe set their own oil facilities on fire. Who knows? But in the meantime, as you know, they named Khomeini's son as the new supreme leader. So they're not, they're still functioning, for headline purposes. They still appear to be in business. So I still think here at $94 oil, I think the risk is still skewed more to the upside than the downside. And even if you say, well, I'd rather take the under on this, we're not going back to 60, 70, $75 oil, in my opinion, anytime soon. And so this still underpins what I believe are solid valuations for these companies. These companies are minting money every day. Oil's up here at $94, $100 oil. They're minting money. And so my view is I'm sticking with the oil names. I'm not selling anything here. I'm not writing cover calls and anything. I'm just writing this and seeing how this plays out. And nobody knows how it's going to play out. That's the thing. There's a lot of huge amount of uncertainty. And at least for today, we're going into the weekend. So I don't think anybody's going to want to sell oil to be short oil going into the weekend, given the uncertainty of you don't know what's going to happen over the weekend. And a lot can happen. And I don't think there's going to be a ceasefire. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I'm not betting on a ceasefire over the weekend that all of a sudden come Monday, all the tankers are cruising through the Strait of Hormuz again. So I'm just sticking with the names that we've owned here. And, I've dipped my toe in and bought a little LNG Cheniere in the meantime, but I'm holding on to all my other names.
So August 2027 futures are at like $67, for someone who hears that on like CNBC of like, well, this is obviously going to be resolved shortly because the 1 year futures haven't moved. Is that, well, look, 1 year futures don't move until we get a little bit closer or things get a lot worse. I mean, how should somebody who doesn't really understand that argument think about that?
Well, that's a year and a half. I mean, is this going to be the same situation today, a year and a half from now? No, no. But it's not going to be over in 4 weeks. And so that's what we've argued all along. Near term, it's going to continue to underpin this higher oil price. Now, the futures market is saying, well, year and a half from now, one way or another, this is going to be resolved. The war is going to be over. We don't know how or when or what form it takes, but it's not going to. You're not going to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed for a year and a half, which I don't think you will. Something's got to give in the meantime, one way or the other. And whether it's just complete obliteration of Iran or if it's a ceasefire or some agreement at some point. But that's what the futures market is telling you: is a year and a half from now, it's not going to be the situation it is today. And and that's why these stocks are typically valued off the 1 year strip, sometimes the 2 year strip on oil. But even then, again, with them minting money today, and given where the valuations are, as long as this conflict's ongoing, as long as you've got oil anywhere up here 70, 80, $100 a barrel, I'm sticking with the names.
So
But
you're
that's
sticking
what's
with them. You're sticking with them, but at what point do you say, you know what, I I have these. My thinking was I'm going to have these for 10 years or for longer, and I know these. What point do you say, you know what, we've this is the best it's going to be, or some of the best? I'm going to peel some off.
I don't know. You got to watch how things evolve. And for me to say, okay, I'm going to peel things off or maybe write some covered calls, a name like CNQ I've owned for many, many years. I don't want to sell it. It's going to be volatile.